begin today the Gemara on the bottom of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis, the last line where it says V'Omar Rabbi Yitzchak. The Gemara here started with the subject regarding building a house, or actually here we're talking about planting trees or planting a vineyard, and the person did not yet eat from it, and therefore he could return from the war. But it brought here a statement that was said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, that said in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. So it brings other statements that they said, even though it has no connection to the subject that we're speaking about. So Zok the Gemara, V'Omar Rabbi Yitzchak, Omar Rabbi Yechanan, Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Meis, Teifes, Arba'a Meis Latuma. When there's a dead body, so around the dead body, 4 amas, the whole area is connected to the mace, that if you stand there, you become tameh. As Rashi explains, this is a gzeira that Chachamim will geyser. In Atayri, you don't become tameh unless you touch the mace or you form a tent, a covering over the mace, or you carry the mace. But over here, we're talking about a person that comes close enough, within 4 amas to the mace. So because you may get close enough and you may touch the mace and so on, so therefore Chachamim will paisha, or geyser, that is, that within the vicinity of the mace, 4 amas, you become tameh. The Tanetuna, there's a raya from a Mishnah that speaks about a halacha where you see this idea that within 4 amas of the mace you become tameh, because the Mishnah says as follows: Chatzer hakever ha'imid chatzer hakever. So first of all, what's this chatzer hakever? So Rashi explains that in those times they would bury people inside caves. There's a cave, and then inside the caves, in the walls of the caves, they would bury people. Now in front of the cave there was this guma, Rashi says, this pit, in order to be able to enter into the cave. So there was this like small area, guma, in front of it, and that's what's called chatzar over here. Chatzar here doesn't mean a regular courtyard. Courtyard over here is this guma that's dug right in front of the pit in order to be able to enter, or right in front of the cave, that is, in order to be able to enter. So now, when a person is standing inside this chatzar hakever, ha'emed b'teicha, you stand inside of it, tar. You're going to be tar. And the reason you're tired is because the cave itself is separated from that pit that's in front of it. It has its own walls, it's sort of separated. So when you stand in it, you don't become tameh from the kvarim that are inside the cave. But the Mishnah says there, V'hu sheyir ba'ar b'amas. That's only if this pit that you're standing in has the size of 4 amas. Divrei Beishamai. This is what Beishamai says. Because if it's 4 amas, it's large enough, it's a significant area for itself. And it's not like part of the cave, and therefore standing there is like, it's not, you're not in the cave. Beis Hillel and Beis Hillel say, Arba Tfachim, that if the cave if the pit that's in front of the cave, this chatzar, has in it the size of 4 Tfachim, that's large enough, that's significant enough, that if you stand there, it does not become bottled to the cave itself, and you do not become tameh. Rashi brings, we find always that 4 Tfachim is considered to be a significant area, enough to be considered separate of the cave itself. When was this said, though, that 4 Tfachim is good enough that it should be significant for itself? Shepischa Momaila. This little pit that's in front of the cave, so how do you get into it? Pischa Momaila means that you have to sort of jump in. You have to just, there's no way to get in just like dropping yourself in. Aval, Pischa Menatzad. But if it does have a way out to get in from the side, meaning there's stairs or maybe there's a ramp that you can just walk in, then Divrei HaKoil Arba Amas. Then everybody agrees that only if it's large enough to be 4 amas, then you won't become tameh. But if it's less than 4 amas, then you will become tameh. So this Mishnah is distinguishing between how this pit in front of the cave is built. Is it in a way that you just have to drop in, or could you just walk in from the side, like with steps? Now the Gemara first explains here, what's the pshat of this distinction? Doesn't make sense the way the Mishnah says it. Klapelai, in what direction are you going? That's a literal translation of these 2 words. What the Gemara is asking is, the distinction that it's making regarding this pit in front of the cave, whether you have to drop in, or whether you can walk in from the side, so the difference should be in the opposite way. And the Gemara explains, Adarabah. And the opposite should be true. Because minatzad, if you're able to walk into this pit in front of the cave, so then midarder v'nafik, you just can walk out, or you can sort of make your way out from the side. And if you can make your way out from the side, so then there's no concern that when the person is going in or out, that he's going to create this covering over the Maira. that his body or his garments will create an oil. He'll create a covering over the mitre because he doesn't have to spread out his hands. If you walk out, so then you can just very carefully walk out without creating any covering over the mitre, which would make you tummy. So when you're going minatzad, so over here, even if it would be smaller, there's no concern that you would become tummy. But Malmaila, however, if the person cannot walk in or out from this cave, or from this pit that's in front of the cave, then it's impossible that when you're making your way out from this pit, that you shouldn't end up making an oihel over the cave where the people are buried. How do you get out? The person has to sort of put his hands, lift up his hands, and lift himself up out of this pit that's in front of the cave. When you lift up your hands, so your garment lifts up, and it covers over the opening of the cave, which you're right in front of. So in such a case, if it's a very tiny area, 4 tfachim, we should be concerned that you don't have any place to maneuver yourself away from the people of the cave. The people that are buried in the cave, the mason that are in the cave. Okay, so that's the shaila of the Gemara here again. So the Mishnah said that if you can walk out, so then if it's 4 ames, then it's okay. But if you have to pick yourself up out of the cave, then even if it's 4 tfachim, it's fine. Says the Gemara, it should be the other way around. If you have to pick yourself up and you have to spread out your hands to be able to lift yourself up, so then it should have to be a big area of 4 ames, so you can move away from the cave when you're getting out. But if you're walking out, even if it's a small area of 4 tfachim, you could just walk away without picking up your hands and without making any oil over the place where the people are buried. So the Gemara Text says, you're right, you have to switch over here the lashon of this Mishnah. Elo, the lashon of the Mishnah is supposed to be, Bamed Dvarim Amurim Shepischa Menatzad. When do we say that 4 tfachim is big enough that we're not concerned that you're not going to become tamei? That's if there's an opening from the side, you can get out easily. If there's an opening only from the top, you have to sort of jump in and then lift yourself up to get out. Then 4 ames. Then you have to have the size of 4 ames to be sure that you're not going to form any covering over the Maira, the cave where the people are buried. Okay, Atkan is the Mishnah and the Hezber of that Mishnah. Now, this the Gemara concludes. What do we understand from that Mishnah? When is there a discussion over here regarding this person that's inside the pit, whether he becomes tamei, whether he does not become tamei? That's if he's in this pit that's in front of the cave, the Misayim Mechitzta, because the Maida, the cave, has its own mechitzas, it's sort of closed in, and then there's the pit in front of it. Avol Meis Ba'alma, if it would be a dead body which is in an open area without the mechitzas of the Maida, toughest. Then what happens is, if you're in an area that's within his 4 ames, the entire area of 4 ames becomes tummy. Right? So over here, even according to Beshame, he's saying that in the 4 ames that's in the pit in front of the cave, there you don't become tummy. But if you were in the 4 ames in the area of the mace itself, you would become tummy. So you see over there from that Mishnah this idea that the Chacham will gaze at this Kseda. Going back to the Mishnah, it said, Mia ish asher eres isha chulo. A person that got married and just Edison, he did not get fully married to his wife yet, so he can return from the war. So the Mishnah said different details about this. Here the Braisa brings this with the sources for it. When it says in the pasuk, a person that got married, echadam ha'aris es hapsula, gets married to hapsula, it's the first time she's getting married. Echadam ha'aris es almana, getting married to an almana. Over echad shemeres yavam. So even in a case where he's anticipating to marry his yavam, to marry a yavama that is from a brother that passed away. And even if there are 5 brothers that could be getting married to her, one of them could be getting married to her. One of the brothers died. All of the brothers now returned because we don't know who's going to end up marrying her. Now, when the pasuk speaks about this, it says v'loy lekocha. He didn't marry her yet. Now, it could have said loy lokach, but instead it says v'loy lekocha. He did not take her. So that extra hey did not take her is excluding something. So what do we exclude from this? In what case does a person not go back from the war? Prat la almana lekoyin gadol. And an almana that's married to koyin gadol is not allowed to be married to her. Grusha v'chalutza lekoyin hedyet, same also, not allowed to be married. Or mamzeres and esin li Yisrael, or bas Yisrael mamzel and osen. In all these cases, when you're not allowed to be married, over here he doesn't go back from the war. Says the Gemara again.
I can't go to the war.
Yeah. Says the Gemara, Leime, shall we say that this last point here in the Braise is the loik Rabbi Yosi Aglili? It's not like the opinion of Rabbi Yosi Aglili. Why? The Rabbi Yosi Aglili, if we follow the opinion of Rabbi Yosi Aglili, Rabbi Yosi Aglili said, Hayore, a person that's afraid, he has a soft heart. What does this mean? Who's afraid? Nobody should be afraid when they're going out in the world. There's no reason to be afraid. The only person that's afraid is the person that has Avedis. And therefore he should return from the war. So over here, this Almana, or marrying a Kohen Gadol, or Kohen Gadol rather, that married this Almana, or the Kohen that married a Grusha, he has an Aveda. So just for that reason alone, she have to return. You don't need a special pasuk to explain to me that this person, that he does not return from the war. He has to return because of the Aveda so that he has in his hand. Says the Gemara, I can tell you this is going according to Rabbi Yosi Aglili. Why is that? Because we are following here the opinion of Rabbe. When it comes to the Isser of an Almana or a Grusha to marry a Kohen or a Kohen Gadol, that's only after he fully marries her, he lives with her, but not just by the Kiddushin itself. Because Ma Tam Lo Yikach, the pasuk says, what's the reason why a Kohen or Kohen Gadol should not marry these women that are not allowed for him? Mishum Lo Yichalel. Because he causes a chilul, he causes whether the wife that he marries or the children that are born to become chalalim, to become desecrated. So therefore he does not get malchus until he actually lives with them. So therefore, over here, this person that's made a kedushin to the almaneh or to the grusha, it's not yet an iser, minatayra at least. So therefore, he would not have to. He would think that such a person should be able to return from the war. So therefore, you have to say the pasuk over here that no, he does not return. That is the chiddush over here according to Rabbah. And Ashiver explains the same thing is also regarding the other Yisurim that are brought up over here. When you get to the Mamzeres and the Nesina, over there also it's Pashit that the Isser is when you get to the actual marriage, actual living together, not just the Isser of the Kiddushin. Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter, Tan Rabbanon, and Abraisa we learned regarding all the things that we mentioned before. The people that returned from the war. So first thing the Pasuk says is Ashabana, person that built a house. Then it says Ashanota, person that planted a tree. Then it says Ashaedes, a person that got married. That's the order. What is the Torah teaching you by writing this order? Limda Torah derech eretz. The Torah is teaching you the proper behavior of a person. What's the order? Sheyivna adam bayis. First, the person should build a house. V'yita kerem, and he should plant a vineyard. And va'achakach yisa. And then he should get married. So he should have these things prepared from before. I saw actually one of the Mefarshim saying that by V'yita Kerem, it doesn't use the term Va'achakach, because really he has to plant his vineyard before, because he's not going to be able to use his vineyard for 3 years. So you plant really the vineyard before, but you only get to use it afterwards. But this is the order. He should have everything prepared, and then he could marry a wife. It says also in Mishlei the Pasek, Hachein b'chutz malachtecha, v'asada basada l'cha. So, and then Acher ubenisa beisecha. What does this mean? Prepare your work on the outside. This refers to taking a place which is sort of outside, an empty lot, which is open, and you build a house there. Then when it says this means what you have in the field, what's standing for you, what's prepared for you in the field, plant a vineyard. And then after that, what is the home of a person? Over here, the home means zuisha. The home, the zakeres habayis, the wife, which is a home. That's the order of the way a person should do it. Okay, this is also brought in the Rambam, by the way. The Rambam brings this in the Hilchos Deis, the order that a person should have is parnasa taken care of before, and only afterwards should he get married. Someone once wrote to the Rebbe, asked the Rebbe about this. Why do we not do it in this order? Bacha goes to yeshiva, he learns Torah, and then he gets married, and then only afterwards does he start doing things for his parnasa. The Rebbe answered that Nishtana Itim, the Rebbe explained why today it's different. I don't remember the details of what, but the Rebbe addressed this, that today the minig is to do it in the opposite order, on a different order. Okay, weiter, the Gemara brings another few drashes on what this pasuk is referring to. Sagt the Gemara, Doveracher, another pshat. Hachim b'chutz malachtecha. You start from the beginning. You prepare on the outside. How do you start? Zeh mikra. First you learn chumash. Also dabasodeh. Then what's prepared for you in the field? L'cha zeh mishnah. You learn the mishnayis. Then you build your home that comes to Gemara. So in other words, the point over here is that the shleimus of a person's learning is in the Gemara. You start first with Chumash, then Mishnayis, but when do you have a full home? In other words, you enter inside Torah fully, that's in Gemara. That's how the Maharsha explains this. Another pshat. That includes both learning Chumash and Mishnayos. That's learning Gemara. When are you fully inside? When you take what you learn and you fulfill it, you have Maisim Tevim. That's when you're inside the home. That includes all three. Mikra, Mishnah, Gemara. That refers to learning Chumash, Mishnayos, and Gemara. Then what you do in the field, that refers to what a person does. He takes the objects of the world and he does mitzvahs with them. That's the Maisim Tevim. And then you build a home. This means that you darshan, you expound upon Torah, and you get even more reward. So there are two pshatim of this. One pshat is the Meiri says the Reish v'Kibbutz Schar means that after the Maisim Tovim, now a person has to also share. He has to darshan. He has to teach Torah to others. Another pshat he said, the Marsha actually says here, the Reish v'Kibbutz Schar means that now after a person knows the basics of Torah and he's mekayim mitzvahs, now he has time to be ma'ayin in Torah, to learn and to analyze deeper, and you get schar for that. Going back to the Mishnah said ve'elu she'enu chayzrit. Following do not return, even though they built a new home. Abayna Beishar, you build just an entryway for a watchman to sit there. And then the Mishnah there actually said that if you had a house and you demolished it and you rebuild a house, if it's the exact same house the way it was before, so it's not considered to be new. So Tana on this we learned in Abraisa im Hoysef by Dimos Echad Chayser. If you added even just one row of bricks, so that's more than it was before, so you return from the war. You build a beautiful brick home, but it's in Sharon, in this area in Eretz Yisrael, you don't return. What's the reason? What's unique about this area? Tane, we learned in Abraisa, the explanation for this, because they have to rebuild a home twice every 7 years because the ground there is not stable and it collapses and you have to rebuild it, so it's not a permanent home. And then the Mishnah says the following people don't even have to move from their place. They don't go out, they remain home. Within the first year of a new home or a new vineyard or the first year of marriage. On this we learn in the Braisa, Isha Chadasha says if you marry a wife, a new wife, you would think it only means a new wife that's getting married for the first time. Almana, Grusha Minayin, an Almana or a Grusha, she's getting married for the second time. How do I know that it's included as well? Tamad Lema, Isha, Mikol Mokim. It says Isha, any wife. In Kema, Tamad Lema, Isha Chadasha. So what does it mean when it says Chadasha? So we do exclude something. What is Chadasha excluding? Mi Shechadasha Loi. Has to be a wife, even though she was married before, but for you, it's a new wife. Yatza, Machse, Grushasa, Shein Chadasha Loi. So this excludes a person that was married to her, he divorced her, he's remarrying her, so it's not a new wife for him. Similar to the point we learned before regarding the house. A person rebuilds his house, it's the same house. Tan Rabbanon, we learned in Abraisa, Lo Yetze Batzava, he doesn't go out to fight in the war because of these people are here, that in the first year. Now Yochel Batzavud Lo Yetze, he doesn't go out to fight in the army. Aval, Yaspik, Mayin, and Mazain, but he still should be there, similar to the other people that it says that they have to come and provide water or food or Visakin Adrachim to pave the roads for them. So they should still help out in the army. Talmud Laima, the pasuk there says clearly, V'loi Yaver Olav L'chol Dover. Nothing passes through. In other words, he doesn't have to go out for anything. I would think that this pasuk here, when it says that he doesn't have to do anything, refers also to those individuals that built a new home or planted a new vineyard or got or got just the edison and did not use it yet. It's not within the first year. They did not yet. So over there, when it said that they have to return, the Mishnah said they don't fight, but they do have to still remain to help out in the army. But I would think that they wouldn't have to help out at all. Talmud Leima Olav. The pasuk says Olav, only the Olav Iyatamaver, only these individuals that are within the first year of marriage or of the home and so on, they don't have to do anything. Aval Atamaver Alacherim. But there are others that do have to help out. They don't fight, but they do have to help out. And those are the people that built a new home, but he didn't use his home yet at all. They come and they have to help. The Gemara goes back, the kosav lo yaver. If the pasuk is saying this lav clearly, lo yaver, that he does not go out at all, he does not help at all. Lo yetzi batzava lamali. Why does it have to also additionally write that he doesn't go out in the army to actually fight? If he doesn't have to help out at all, for sure he doesn't have to fight. Says the Gemara, Laver, Olav Shnei Lavin. You're right. It's like telling you that if he goes out and he leaves and he goes and he fights, he's going to be over in two Lavin, the Lav of Lo Yaver and the Lav of Lo Yetzel Batzova. Continuing regarding what is said to the Yidden when they go out to the war. Yosfu hashaitrim ledaber alon v'gaymer. Now the shaitrim continue and they speak to the people. We had before in the Gemara. This was first the Kayin spoke, then the Kayin spoke and the shaitrim explained, and now after that just the shaitrim, they spoke to the Yidden and they encouraged the Yidden and they told Yidden that they should not be afraid and they shouldn't run away and so on. Oh, actually, over here, if you say again, the lashon of the pasuk is Mia ish hayari v'rachal evav, person that's afraid, yelech v'yashav lebeisai. So he should return back to his home. V'lo yimes es levav echav klavave. He shouldn't cause other people to be afraid like him. That's what the shaitrim tell the people. So now the Gemara explains, what does this mean? Who is it speaking about? Rabbi Kiva oimer hayari v'rachal evav. Who is a person that's afraid? Kamashmai, it means literally, simply, she'eni yachal lamed b'kishrei al-mulchama. He can't stand in war. Kishrei al-mulchama, Rashi says Kishrei al-mulchama means when you have like a line of defense, when people are standing like tightly together, so you can't handle standing. V'liris cherev shlufa, to see an outstretched sword, he gets afraid of this. So the pshat of the pasuk is simple. Rabbi Yosef Glili says, Hayare v'rachal ivav, zeu ha-misyare min ha-averis shebiyadeh. This is a person that's afraid of averis that he has in his hands. That's what it means. In other words, otherwise, if he doesn't have averis, he has nothing to be afraid of. The Avedis, that's what he has to be afraid of. The Eibusher will not save his life. So the Ramban speaks about this over here. The Ramban al-Atayr speaks about this machlokes of Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yosi, and he says that according to Rabbi Kiva, even this person that has Avedis has no reason to be afraid. And the reason is because if he has betachan in the Eibusher that he's going to make a nest, so then even with Avedis, the Eibusher is going to make that nest to him. But if he's afraid, if he doesn't have that betachan, then the Eibusher will not make the nest for him. Right? Unbelievable thing. But Rabbi Yosi says no, that if he has Avedis, then he won't be saved. That's one nekuda here on this machlokes. Another thing, the Rebbe speaks about this machlokes, and the Rebbe says Rabbi Kiva could not learn like Rabbi Yosi that we're speaking about a person that's afraid of his Avedis. Because if this person is afraid that he could die because of the Avedis that he has, that itself shows that he realizes that because of his Avedis he deserves a punishment, so that's already a beginning of tshuva. Even if he didn't actually fully do tshuva yet, but really, where does that come from? It comes from his neshama that he recognizes his averis that he deserves an einish. So that's already enough of a tshuva that he wouldn't get harmed because of this. So therefore, Rabbi Kiva has to learn that the pshat in the pasuk is just kipshutai, that a person that's just afraid. Sagt the Mishnah weiter. Rabbi Yosef Glili, he says similar to Rabbi Yosi, but he says as follows: that. Sorry, did I go up a line over here? Yeah. Was that before it was Rabbi Yosef Glili, right? Now it's Rabbi Yosi. That's what it is. Okay, Rabbi Yosi says, Almana l'kohen gadol, grusha v'chalutza l'kohen hedyet. What kind of avedis should a person be afraid of? The examples that we mentioned before: an almana that married a kohen gadol, or a grusha and chalutza that marries a kohen hedyet, or mamzeres nesin l'Yisrael, bas Yisrael l'mamzer l'nasin. Those are individuals that have to be afraid of Avedis. Not of all Avedis that you have to be afraid of, like Rabbi Yosi Aglili said. The Gemara will explain the difference between them. Sagt the Mishnah weiter. Now, that is, and when they finish speaking to the people, so now they're going out to the war. So they had generals that were standing, and the head, and the top, and the beginning, when people are going out. And then behind everybody. What this means is they had very strong generals that were standing in the front to go ahead, and others that were standing behind them. And they had these metal spears in their hands, or something similar to spears. Anybody that wanted to return was afraid, he's allowed to cut off and knock off his feet. You can't have any Yidden running away in the middle because that will cause everybody to get afraid. So this one person that's trying to run away is bringing fear into everyone's heart. Shetchilas nisa nefila. The beginning of running away is nefila, when you fall. I mean, the lashon of the Mishnah here, Rashi says, as the Gemara will explain, really the Mishnah is supposed to be read the opposite. Tchilas nefila nisa. The beginning of falling is when you start running away. So therefore, they're allowed to stop anybody from running away. You're basically causing others to get afraid. It's like one of the Mefarshim say, it's like a mamash Indian of a reidif. That because one people is running away, it causes everyone else to get afraid, and everyone else will get killed. Shanema, the source of this is Nos Yisrael of Nei Plishtim. When people run away, they ran away from the Plishtim, and then there was a big plague amongst Yidden. So you see, when they ran away, that brought a Magefa. Another pasuk says, Plishtim, they ran away, and that's when they died. They fell dead. So the Gemara, the Mishnah that is, now here, this next part of the Mishnah goes on the entire Perek. All the different details we learned about who's allowed to return, who's not allowed to return, who has to go out and fight. When all these distinctions said, when it's fighting a war, which is just a reshus. When you're going to conquer additional territory, if the war that you're fighting is a mitzvah, Rashi says, conquering Eretz Yisrael, like in the times of Yeshua, they came to conquer Eretz Yisrael. So over here, Hakoil Yaitzen, everybody has to go out to war. A chasam from his room, a kala from the chuppah. Rabbi Yehuda says, when do we say that there's a distinction who goes, who does not go, b'mulchames mitzvah? If there's a mulchames mitzvah, so Rabbi Yehuda refers to the mulchame that the Tanakama referred to as a rishos, he refers to it as a mitzvah. The one is going to explain why that is. If it's a war which is an obligation, again it refers to the same thing. The obligation of fighting to conquer Eretz Yisrael, hakol yaitzin. Everybody has to enjoy. A chasam and a kala as well. There's actually a discussion in Mefarshim about this because this lashon of the Mishnah is very interesting. A kala, a woman has to also go out to fight in war. Does that mean that the women who were drafted also to fight into the war to conquer Eretz Yisrael? So the Radvaz, I think, says, no, they didn't fight. But what happens is, if the chassan leaves, so then the kala leaves her chuppah. Not that she goes out to fight. It says kala michopasa means that the kala, if the chassan is not there, she leaves her chuppah. But it doesn't say in the Gemara clearly that the kala goes out and fights. Another pshat I saw it says is, no, the kala also has to join, but not to actually fight. But she has to join, like it said before, to work in the kitchen. Mayim, mozain, to prepare the food for the soldiers that are fighting. Zok the Gemara. My ikke ben Rabbi Yosi le Rabbi Yosi Aglili. What's the difference between Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Yosi Aglili? Rabbi Yosi says that who was the first Tana? The first one was Rabbi Yosi Aglili, right? So Rabbi Yosi Aglili said, if you're afraid from any Averis, then you should return from the war. And Rabbi Yosi said only specific Averis, right? Yeah. Okay, so what's the difference between them? So the Gemara, the difference is Avera de Rabbanon. If there's an Avera only midrabanan, so according to Rabbi Yosi, then you don't return. Because Rabbi Yosi brings examples of Amanah Kain Gadol, Grushata Kain Hediyah, those are Averis Minat Taira. Averis Minat Taira, so that you return from the war, but not Averis midrabanan. Rabbi Yosi Glui is saying any Averis, even Averis midrabanan, even though this is a Pasuk Minat Taira. But even Minat Taira, there's a mitzvah to Leisasa, exactly, to listen to the Chachamim. Zog the Gemara, Keman Oslo Hodetanya. According to who does it go? The following that it says here in the Braisa: Soch bein tefillah letefillah. If a person spoke, he interrupted between putting on the tefillin shel yad and putting on the tefillin shel rosh. Averi biyodai. This is an averi v'chayzer alem ercha mulchama. And you return from the war. You have an averi, so you return. Keman, whose opinion is this? Rabbi Yosi Aglili. This is Rabbi Yosi Aglili's opinion that says that even an averi midrabanan you return from the war. So here there's a discussion about this in the Mefarshim. Why is it saying dafka this thing of the tefillin over here? That what's the chiddush dafka regarding tefillin? So they say that the Rosh says about this that the tefillin is the schus that the Yidden are victorious in the battle. Right? The Rebbe used to speak about this v'ro kolam yaretz, when the nations of the world see the tefillin. That was the mitzvah tefillin that the Rebbe began in the 6-day war. And the Rosh says the lashon of the pasuk v'toraf zroya af kodkoid is all b'schus the tefillin. So that's why it's mentioning if a person puts on tefillin and he speaks in between, he has to go back from the war because he's missing the full schus of the tefillin. Now the chiddush over here is, even according to Rabbi Yosi Aglili, that says that you go back even for Averis midrabanan, but over here, this is not even mamash a mitzvah midrabanan. It's just a hefsik that he has to make another bracha. What happens if you make a hefsik? So Rashi over here says that if you talk between the tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel rosh, then you're going to have to make a second bracha on your tefillin shel rosh. That's the halacha. Other Rishonim, by the way, disagree with this. Taisvis holds, and in the Welt, this is a minig, that you make a bracha on tefillin shel yad and a tefillin shel rosh, even if you did not make a hefsek. You always make a bracha al mitzvah tefillin on tefillin shel rosh. If you made a hefsek, then you're going to have to make again the bracha lehaniach tefillin on the tefillin shel rosh. So you're going to end up making 3 brachas. 1 bracha on the tefillin shel yad, but then once you made a hefsek, you're going to have to say that bracha over again, and the bracha al mitzvah tefillin on tefillin shel rosh. That's Taisvis' shittah. But Rashi says you only make a second bracha. This is our minig. You only make a second bracha if you made a hefsek. So the whole thing of here of making a hefsek is seems to be just an inyan whether you're making an extra bracha or not. But nevertheless, this is something that you go back from the war. Sagt the Gemara weiter. Man Tana La, the Tana Rabbanan. Who is the Tana of this Brais here that says Shama Kol Karnais? He heard the sounds of the trumpets that are blowing. And Vertia, and he got afraid. Hagofas Trisen. He heard the armies, the Goyim that are coming, and they're banging their shields. And Vertia, he got afraid. Tzichtzua Charbais. He heard the swords that are being sharpened. Maim Shaisis and Loyal Birkov, and he's watered on his knees, and he can't really hold himself in. He's so afraid. Chayzer, he returns from the war. Keman, whose opinion is this? Leimer Rabbi Kivi. This seems to be Rabbi Kivi. Rabbi Kivi is the one that said that we interpret the pasuk literally. The one that's afraid has to return. But it's not according to Rabbi Yisrael Glili. Rabbi Yisrael Glili says that's only someone that's afraid of Avedis. If you're afraid, you have to stay. Says the Gemara, no, but in such a case, when a person is mamish so afraid, I feel that Rabbi Yisrael Glili might. Rabbi Yisrael Glili would agree. He shouldn't cause the heart of his fellows to melt like his own. So if he's afraid to disagree, even Rabbi Yisrael Glili agrees. So then what happens? They have the shaitrim there, and they have to stop Yidden from running away. So says the Gemara, what did the Mishnah say? The beginning of running away is falling. That's not that. What does that mean? What does that mean? The beginning of running away. If you're running away, you're running away. It should say the beginning of falling in the war is when you begin running away. So, or when you run away, that is. So the Gemara answers, you're right. That's what the Mishnah means to say. The beginning of the falling of the people in the army is when they run away. That's how you teach the Mishnah. Okay, now the last thing in the Mishnah was the distinction between a Mechemes Rishos or Mechemes Mitzvah. Or the other Lashon that was brought, the difference between, Rabbi Yehuda says, the difference between Mechemes Mitzvah or Mechemes Chayva. What is the argument here? So the Gemara explains. Rabbi Yechanan said, Rishos de Rabbanon, Zuhi Mitzvah de Rabbi Yehuda. The term Rishos that the Tanakama, the Rabbanon in the Mishnah is saying, that is the same kind of war that Rabbi Yehuda refers to it as a mitzvah. They're talking about the same war, but it's only a question of whether it's referred to as a rishos or it's referred to as a mitzvah. And the Gemara will soon conclude that they're really all arguing about one point over here. Do I refer to it as a mitzvah, and therefore what happens by a mitzvah? The rule is if you're Isaac in one mitzvah, you're potter of another mitzvah. Or do I refer to it as a rishos, so you're not potter from doing another mitzvah? Now, mitzvah de Rabbanon, when the Rabbanon used the term mitzvah, zui chayve de Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda uses regarding that the term of chayve. Okay, that's the Pshat in Mishnah. Because Rabbi Yehuda used the term mitzvah, so that when he wants to contrast it to another war that's higher than it, that's more of an obligation, that everybody has to go out, so he uses the term chayve. In other words, the point that the Gemara is trying to say is, they're not arguing here about the very halacha itself that it's saying here. That the war that's a chayva or a mitzvah in the Tanakama's language, everybody has to go out. That halacha they're not arguing about. What they are arguing about is regarding this war that's a rishos. Do I call it a rishos or call it a mitzvah? And then afkamin is going to be regarding Isaac mitzvah, patam and a mitzvah, as the Gemara explains it. So the Gemara explains this what Rabbi Yechanan said. So Rav explains what are these different kinds of wars that we're talking about. Mulchames Yeshua. When they came into Eretz Yisrael with Yeshua, lichpaish to conquer the land, divrei kol chayva. Everybody agrees that this is a chayva. Everybody has to go out and fight. Like it said before, chasen, kala, everybody. Lechem is based David L'Ruvacha. David HaMelech, when he went and conquered certain countries or certain places, he went, Rashi says, Aram Tzayve went there in the area of Syria, in the north, and he conquered additional places just to have more people to give him taxes and so on. Everybody agrees that that's considered to be a rishos, and not everybody has to go fight. Ki pligi, where's the argument? If the Yidden are going to fight, they're not conquering the land. And they're not stam going to conquer additional territory, but they're going to fight with Goyim that are outside of Eretz Yisrael, that are antagonizing the Yidden, or that are a problem for the Yidden. You don't want these Goyim to come and attack the Yidden. Mar karilo mitzvah. Rabbi Yehuda refers to this as a mitzvah. Omar karilo rishos. And Tanakama refers to it as a rishos. What's the difference if you call it a mitzvah or if you call it a rishos? Nafkemine lo'isik b'mitzvah shepatim min mitzvah. The relevance of this is, will the idea of when you're occupied with one mitzvah that you're absolved of doing another mitzvah apply in this case? This Muhammad, when you're fighting to stop the goyim to come attack you, are you considered to be in the middle of a mitzvah? Or not? It's still considered to be a rishos because you're not conquering the land. Kibush ha'aretz is a mitzvah to conquer Eretz Yisrael. But to fight these goyim, maybe that's not in the category of Isaac b'mitzvah. That was the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Hadran, Allah, Mashuach, Muhammad. This is the conclusion of the 8th Perek of the Masechta, the Perek Mashuach Muhammad. Okay. I think, is it possible that I missed a line in the Mishnah before on Amud Aleph? Can I go back a second? Nabiyesi Aglili? I think I missed a line over there. The Mishnah says, Hayari v'racha livov zeh misyarim and amveda shebiyadai. I think the next line, over here, lefichach. This lefichach I forgot to read before. Lefichach tolsaloi atayre es kol elu sheyachzor beglalan. What the Mishnah is saying is that the pasuk says that there are all kinds of people that have to return. People that built a new home, people that got married. Why is the Torah saying all these things? So that the person that has Avedis and is returning for Avedis shouldn't be embarrassed of his Avedis. People should say, Mastam is returning because he built a new home. Mastam is returning because he planted a new vineyard. That's, okay, one line that I missed over there, I think. Okay, let's begin. Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, the 9th Perek, the last Perek of Masechta Sotah. This Perek will discuss the halachas of Egla Arufa, which was mentioned before when it spoke about the things that have to be said B'Lashon HaKodesh. So over here, Egla Arufa is when you find a dead body outside a city and it's unclear how he died or who killed him or caused his death. So the Bezdin has to come out and say that we did not spill his blood and so on, and that the Eibusha should be mechaper for the Yidden. And you bring a Egla, you bring a calf and you cut off its from the neck, you cut off its head. That's the halacha of Egla Arufa that it says in the pasuk. So Dr. Mishnah, Egla Arufa, B'Lashon HaKodesh. So the Bezdin that says, the psukim that says, what they say has to be said in Lashon Kodesh. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Ki yimatze chalol ba'adama, you find a dead body, V'yotzu zekenecha v'sheftecha, the zekenim and the sheftim go out. So, how many go out? Shloisha, mi Bezdin HaGadol, sheb Yerushalayim hoya yotzin. 3 have to come out from the Bezdin. And from which Bezdin? They have to come out from the Bezdin HaGadol, from the Sanhedrin of 71 in Yerushalayim. Okay, the Mishnah here does not spell out how you know Lashon HaKodesh. The Gemara will explain. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says Chamisha. 5 of the Bezdin HaGadol has to go out. Shenemar, the pasuk says Zekenecha. So Zekenecha is a plural, so that's Shnayim, 2. And then it says V'Sheftecha. Also Sheftecha says Shnayim, another 2. Now, Ve'im Bezdin Shokel, so that's 4, but a Bezdin it could never be equal because you always have to, if there's an argument, you have to have a majority to be able to decide. So therefore you add 1 more, which is 5. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, Nimtza Tomun Begal. If this dead body is found covered in a pile of stones, or he was hung on a tree, or he's floating on water, so then the halacha of Egla Arufa does not apply. Shanema, when the pasuk describes when you found this person, the pasuk says that you found him ba'adama. Ba'adama means on the earth, but on the ground. V'loy tama begal, but not if he's covered in stones. Nafal, that is, that you found him that he fell. V'loy tali bilo, not if he's hanging. Besadeh, in the field. V'loy tzav al pnei hamayim, and not if he's floating on the water. Nimtza samach lasfar, he was found near the border, oili'ir sherubayiv dekechavim, or a city that's mostly goyim, oili'ir she'ein ba bezdin, or a city that there's no bezdin, lo yoyfen. Over there, there's no halacha of Egla Arufa as well. Yeah, the Gemara will explain this. Now, there's another halacha by Egla Arufa. Before you do the whole halacha of Egla Arufa, you have to measure to see which city was this Egla Arufa closer to. The mess, that is. Which city was the mess closer to? Says the Gemara, Mishnah that is, Ein moededin elo le'ir sheyesh ba bezdin. You only measure to a city where the city has a bezdin. If the city does not have a bezdin, then this halacha of measuring does not apply. Sagt the Gemara, Mai ka'omar, what's the pshat in the Mishnah? The Mishnah says, you say b'lashon HaKodesh, it brings the pasuk, but it's not clear how you learn this from the pasuk. Amar Rabavos says, this is the pshat. Shenema, the pasuk says, va'onu va'omru. Over here, when they say the Bezdin, so they say va'onu va'omru, they say Yedenu le'shavchus adam la'alanu oimer, and the pasuk says by Hagriz ben Areval va'onu alavim va'omru. Just like there, they spoke in Lashon HaKodesh, as we learned earlier in the Masechta. Afkam b'Lashon HaKodesh. Here as well, you have to say in Lashon HaKodesh. And then the Mishnah continues, V'seide egla harufa ketzad, and the order of how the egla harufa was done. So it brings the pasuk, Yimatzeh chol ba'adama, v'yotze zekenecha, v'shivtecha, shleishim v'bezna gadol, sheb'Yerushalayim ha'yotzim. 3 of the bezna gadol in Yerushalayim would go out. So that's just explaining the seder of egla harufa, but that's not the source for Lashon HaKodesh. That's 5 would go out. Yeah. From Vana we learned that. Rabbi Yehuda says that there were 5. So the Gemara explains the machlokes whether it was 3 or 5. What do you see in the pasuk? So Tana Rabbanan, the Yotzu Zikenecha v'Shevtecha. Zikenecha Shnayim. Zikenecha is 2. V'Shevtecha is also Shnayim, another 2. Ve'im Bezin Shokel. A Bezin cannot be equal to 4. So Misif Nolein Eidechad, you have to add 1 more. Arekan Chamisha. So you have 5. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, this is Rabbi Yehuda. Rab Shimon says, Zikenecha Shnayim. We only learn from Zikenecha. Zikenecha is 2. Vein Bez and Shakel, it can't be just 2. So therefore, Mesifan Aleim by Dechad, you add 1 more. Arek Kan Shloisha, so you have only 3. Like the Tanakam in our Mishnah. Frek the Gemara, Rab Shimon Nami Yaksiv Shevtecha. According to Rab Shimon, why is he skipping the word Shevtecha? Answers the Gemara, Humi Boyle Lemichadim Shevtecha. He needs Shevtecha to teach me that it has to be from the special ones of Shevtecha, which means it has to be from the Bezdin Agadol. Rabbi Yehuda, where does Rabbi Yehuda learn that out from? He says, Miziknei Zikenecha Nafke. It could have said in the pasuk Ziknei, and then it says Zikenecha. Zikenecha is emphasizing that it's yours, the miyuchad. So he learns it out from Zikenecha, so Shevtecha is still extra to tell me that there's another 2. Rab Shimon says, I kasav Ziknei, Havamina Fila Ziknei Ashuk. If it would have just said Ziknei, then I would have said that means Zikenim even from the Shuk. Meaning it doesn't have to be from the Sanhedrin. Kasav Rachmana Zikenecha. So then the Torah has to write you, the first thing is it has to be Zikenecha. Vi Kasav Rachmana Zikenecha. If it would just say Zikenecha, Havamina Fila Sanhedrin Ketana. So I know that it's not min hashuk, it has to be proper from a bezdin, but I would say maybe that could be from a Sanhedrin Ketana, maybe from a bezdin of 23. Doesn't have to be from the bezdin Agadol in Yerushalayim. So therefore the Torah writes Shevtecha to say that it has to be from the special ones, meaning from the one from the bezdin Agadol. So the point is that according to Rab Shimon, you don't have extra word Shevtecha here to teach me that it has to be 4. You only know 2, and then you have to add 1 more that it should not be equal, so that's just 3. But Rabbi Yehuda, from where does Rabbi Yehuda learn this all out? How does he know that it has to be dafka from the Sanhedrin? Gomar ziknei miziknei ha'eda. He learns out from the term ziknei that it says here, from the term ziknei that it says by the carbon that's brought, a par, helem, dover, when the Bezdin paskin something and Klal Yisrael did something based on their psak, and it was an aveda, so there it says ziknei aida. Mala lam yechadim shebeida, just like there, who is ziknei aida? It refers to the Bezdin Yerushalayim. Afkam yechadim shebeida. So over here as well, it has to be yechadim shebeida from the Bezdin Agadol. That's from where Rabbi Yehuda learns it out. So therefore, the Shevtecha is extra to tell you that you have to have 5. Frek the Gemara, Gomar. If he learns out from there, ligmar lekula milsim hasam. Let him learn it all out from there, because over there Rashi brings that by the Gemara Sanhedrin says by the par helem dovar, that's only if you have 5 of the Sanhedrin that paskind, then they have to bring that carbon par helem dovar. So you could learn it all out from there. Why do he have to learn? Why does he have to learn out that you need 5 over here from the Lashon Zikenecha and Shevtecha? Zikenecha Shevtecha lamali. Ella says the Gemara, you're right. He does not hold of this Gzeda Shav. You can't say that. So how? From where does Rabbi Yehuda know that you have to have 5? Ella, rather, he learns it out. Vav v'shevtecha leminyana. It's from the vav that's extra. He needs the shevtecha to teach me that it has to be the bezdin agadol, like Rab Shimon. But he darshans from the vav. But Rab Shimon, vav lemashmale. And Rab Shimon does not hold from that vav. Doesn't darshan the vav, so therefore he only needs 2 and another 3. Now let's just conclude it. You know over here, frek the Gemara, ella meyata. So now, why don't we continue in the pasuk there and learn that you should need more than 3 or more than 5? Because it says v'yatzu, they go out. That's another plural term, shnayim, another 2. Then it says umadadu, and they measure. Shnayim, shouldn't that be another 2? So Rabbi Yehuda are kantisha. Rabbi Yehuda says that you only need 5. If you add another 4, that should be 9. And Rabbi Shimon are kanshiva. Rabbi Shimon that said you only need 3. So if you add another 4, there should be 7 here. Says the Gemara, no, you can't learn out from there. Like the Tanya, from those words, v'yatzu, umadatu, you learn out what the Brisa says. V'yatzu, what does it mean? They go out. Hein v'lo shluchein. The Bezdin Agadol themselves, they have to go out and measure. They can't send any shliach of a Bezdin. Madadu, they measure. What does that mean? Even if you know for a fact that this mace is closer to one city than another, so you think to yourself, why do I have to measure? It's clear where it's closer to. How you might it in, they still would have to measure. There's a mitzvah to measure, even if you know that it's close. So machlokes exactly in such a case whether you measure from both cities, or you only measure to the city that it's closer to, or you only measure from the city that it's further to, because really in essence you know where this mace is. But still there's a mitzvah to measure in such a case.